As a Lions fan, I don't know if it felt better than that. I mean, to put their foot down on it, not to let the defense decide it for them. Hope to see a lot more of that this year.
First of all, gutsy call here. And
guys, we're in it. Happy football. Let's get it.
With Dan Campbell, right? Unbelievable. But that route was a little slice of brilliance right there by St.
The Detroit Lions start their quest for a Super Bowl in a rematch of last year's wildcard game. Matthew Stafford and the LA Rams are coming to town trying to wreck that party. Let's discuss who comes out ahead in Goff versus Stafford III. Welcome back to the channel. I am your host, Johnny Gaz. Thank you for returning for another video. The NFL season is officially upon us. Let's kick off with our first week game preview, Lions versus Rams. This will be Sunday, September 8th, 8:20 p.m. kickoff on NBC and Peacock. Let's go. Before we dive into this awesome Week 1 rematch, make sure to hit that like button if you dig the vibe here at Johnny Gaz Sports. That subscription button and notify bell is the best way to make sure you don't miss any future videos. I'd love it if you consider subscribing to the channel. It's the best free way to help us out. We're going for 2,000 subscribers. I have so much fun content planned for the regular season here. Also have a membership option available. If you hit the join button, I'll walk you through all the options you have to become a part of the family. Let's dive into Week 1. Let's dive into the headlines for this Week 1 matchup. Detroit Lions versus LA Rams. Week 1, Sunday Night Football, 8:20 p.m. kickoff on September 8th on NBC and Peacock. What a great way to kick off this NFL season. Again, a rematch of last year's wild card game. The Lions came out on top 24-23. It was a fantastic scene at Ford Field and should be again to kick off this NFL season. The Lions offense, headed up by Jared Goff, was truly elite last season and has been for several seasons. They finished third in total yardage last year, and the Rams were no slouch. The Detroit Lions defense was truly the question for them last year. They've revamped that secondary for the second year in a row and have now added some key pieces up front on the defensive line to give help to Aiden Hutchinson. The Rams have some questions on both sides of their offensive and defensive lines. Injuries on the offensive side and losing a Hall of Famer on the defensive side. We'll talk about that in more detail. For these game previews, we'll go over the key matchups as we head into these games. We'll look at a quarterback comparison. Talk about some X factors and who the team leaders could be in the matchup. We'll talk about the true difference in what I believe the game will be, and I'll give my ultimate prediction for these matchups. Let's dive into Week 1, Lions versus Rams. Let's start off by looking at what I think will be the key matchups in this Week 1 game between the Detroit Lions and LA Rams. I think the biggest matchup will be the Lions' revamped secondary versus Matthew Stafford and the Rams' pass offense. We've talked about this in detail. The Lions' ultimate bugaboo last season and even prior to that is defending the pass, being able to defend big-time wide receivers, and that included Puka Nacua in the wild card game. They now have a very healthy Cooper Kupp. Have the Lions done enough revamping the secondary, adding Terrion Arnold and Enos Rakestraw on the draft, trading for Carlton Davis, free agent Amik Robertson? I mean, they have a whole new cast of characters in the secondary. Will that change their pass defense here in 2024? And I think this is your true ultimate testing point and matchup here in Week 1. Past that, I think the Rams' rushing attack versus the Lions' rush defense is another key thing to eye in on. The Lions' rush defense last year, again, was something that they can lean their hat on. Overall, their defense was not good, but that was very good in 2023. They've brought in a new defensive line coach in Terrell Williams and added several key pieces. DJ Reader is a run stuffer. We'll have to see what his status is as we get closer to this Week 1 matchup. But if he is in the lineup along with Marcus Davenport and the other pieces they've added, I think their rush defense should continue to be what it was in past seasons. We know the Rams can pop off with Kyren Williams. They've also added Blake Corum in the draft. So I think with all the excitement, the aggressiveness you'll see out of the Lions' front seven, you may see things like draws and screens play a big part in this game. So that'll be something to look for. I think the Lions' passing game against the Rams' defense will be another key matchup here. We know the potency of the Lions' elite offense. The Rams have replaced both their cornerbacks this offseason. Tre'Davious White and Darius Williams are now their new starting cornerbacks. Can they keep up with the Lions' passing attack? And then we've talked in exhaustion about the Lions trying to add an X wide receiver. Well, do they bring someone up from the practice squad, or they go in with the four guys they've brought in on their active roster? We know what Amon-Ra St. Brown gives. You're hoping to get a ton out of Jamison Williams. You have Isaiah Williams behind him along with Khalif Raymond. So can the Rams defense keep up with that Lions passing attack? On top of that, you have the Lions rush offense, elite offensive line, elite running backs, And I think a more potent attack there for the Lions in 2024 doesn't bode well in this matchup for a Rams team that's now lost Hall of Famer Aaron Donald. So can that Rams defensive line hold up in this matchup? I also think that the Rams offensive line is something to look out for. They have a lot of injury concerns up front. They've also lost Alaric Jackson, their left tackle, to suspension for the first few weeks. Jonah Jackson, who they grabbed from the Lions, has transitioned over to center now and looks like he will play at center in their week 1 matchup. So there's a ton of moving pieces. Can the Rams protect Matthew Stafford in this week 1 matchup? The Lions got a ton of pressure. Hutch had, I think, 2.5 sacks in that wild card game. That's going to be huge in this week 1 matchup. In any NFL matchup, you got to look at the quarterback comparison. But anytime the Lions and Rams square up historically now, it's going to be linked to what happened with Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford. And we've talked about in great length in previous videos. So let's focus on the current history. Obviously, coming off of that wild card matchup, both quarterbacks played very, very well. Matthew Stafford was actually excellent in that game, finishing 25 of 36 for 367 yards and 2 scores. Jared Goff, no slouch, 22 of 27 for 277 yards and 1 touchdown. I think just looking at this matchup, I think Goff really has the edge. Home opener, week 1. We know Goff plays very, very well inside at home in the Dome. I think you got a lot of momentum here in this matchup, but we know Matthew Stafford is a Lions fan. He's a winner. He's gutsy. He's tough. We talked about their offensive line concerns, so I think that plays a factor in this game and Matthew Stafford's effectiveness, but I don't think he allows this game to get out of hand by any means, and I expect it to be close because of this quarterback matchup. These two will forever be linked. It's always interesting to see them come together, and it'll be awesome to see who comes out on top in Goff versus Stafford 3. Let's discuss what I think will be the X factors or difference makers in this game. So let's start on the Lions side. I think you got to start with Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's the captain. He's the leader. I think any early part of the season offense should really go through your guy, and that's him. And I think, knowing his work ethic, knowing what he wants to do with this season, taking his game to an even better level, which is crazy to think about, I think you open up the offense through him. There's a lot of offensive options that the Lions have, but to me, kicking off this season, going with your surefire all-pro in Amon-Ra St. Brown is never a bad bet. On the other side of the football, I think Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua make a huge difference in this game. I'm going to lean on Cooper Kupp in this matchup in particular because I think the Lions will make every effort not to allow Puka Nacua to hurt them in this matchup, which I think will open things up for Cooper Kupp, and that's pretty scary. And that's why I think ultimately the Rams offense can keep up here. If their offensive line can hold up at least a little bit, they have a potent enough offense to do what needs to do to keep this game close. Moving back to the Lions, I think you can't look past a guy like David Montgomery in this early season matchup. If for some reason the pass game can't get going for the Lions, I think they then lean on a guy like David Montgomery. I don't think they want to overwork Jahmyr Gibbs early in the season. Yes, I think ultimately he'll get a lot more touches, and Jahmyr Gibbs I think will be a much bigger factor in the passing game in 2024. But if you're going to lean on somebody in week 1, I think that has to be David Montgomery. So again, I think he is an X factor for that reason in this game. Going back to the Rams, I think you also have to look at Kyren Williams or Blake Corum as an X factor in this game. The reason I bring up Corum is because of the Detroit ties, the Michigan ties. Again, going back to the aggressiveness the Lions show in general, on top of it being a week 1 matchup at home, at Ford Field, that environment is going to be bananas. And they're going to be amped up, and you may see some over-aggressiveness there, which I think leans back on the Rams' draw game, screen game, short passing game, utilizing those running backs heavy here in this week 1 matchup. Sticking with the Rams, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. Yes, they lost Aaron Donald, and you can't just replace that kind of player, of course. But in the draft, in the first round, they brought in 2 guys from Florida State, Jared Verse, Braden Fisk at pick number 19, pick number 39 in the first round of this last year's draft, and certainly is a great start in replacing a guy like Aaron Donald. Can the Lions offensive line hold up against those 2 guys? Does one of them break out, the Lions focusing on one or the other? And the Rams already had a few decent pass rushers. So I think adding those 2 guys to the mix, they could be X factors in this particular game. Going back to the Lions on the defensive side, again, you got to start with your main guys and go back to your pillar players, especially early in the season. And I think we go to Aiden Hutchinson. You have about as healthy as I think you'll look all season on the defensive line. You're still waiting to hear what DJ Reader is going to give week 1, and I will keep you posted here on the channel once we get those injury designations as we get closer and closer to Sunday, September 8th. But I think you have a healthy Marcus Davenport, James Houston, Aleem McNeil, Levi Onwuzurike. You have all your pieces ready to go, which I think gives Hutchinson the freedom to operate the way we want him to operate, at least the way the Lions want him to operate. And I think that makes him a difference maker in this week 1 matchup. Look for him to wreck house in week 1. Let's get into what the difference in this game will be. And I believe it to be the Lions offense overwhelming the Rams here in this week 1 matchup. We know the Lions' offensive status. It was elite last year. I believe they finished 5th in offensive efficiency, 5.9 yards per play, which was 3rd in the NFL. And they've continued this upward trajectory on offense. Now, I don't expect them to just blow the roof off the place as far as scoring points. It's still week 1. Their starters haven't played yet. And I think that does hold them back just a little bit as they try to get some continuity and remesh here into the season. But I think really with the Ford Field backing, with all the momentum, they're going to want to get off to a hot start. You know, guys' work ethic like Amon-Ra St. Brown, those 2 running backs, the offensive line in general. So I think that ultimately that offense is the overwhelming factor in this game. I also believe that the cleaner the Lions play here in week 1, the more of the separation in the score will be. You know, week 1 NFL historically is a little bit dirty as far as penalties and, you know, again, the continuity of the offenses and defenses. And usually you get lower scoring games in general. Well, I think, again, the cleaner the Lions play, the more opportunities that they'll have. And I think ultimately the more of a separation in the score that you will see. And having to put my stamp on this week 1 matchup, Detroit Lions, LA Rams, Sunday Night Football, September 8th, 8:20 p.m. on NBC and Peacock. I think the Lions come out on top. I think they have all the momentum coming off of last season. They are hungry. Dan Campbell wants this team to get off to a good start here in 2024 and get off to this quest for a Super Bowl, truly. So I think Ford Field, the Lions in general, overwhelm this particular game. I see a final score of 31-24 Lions. Lions are -3.5 in this game, and the over-under is set at 51, so I would take the over, and I would take Detroit -3.5 in this particular matchup. I could see maybe a late score by the Rams, making this a little bit closer than it appears. But again, I don't think Matthew Stafford allows this game to become out of hand in any way, shape, or form. He wants to get a win, I'm sure, so badly in Detroit. So I think it does make it an interesting matchup. But ultimately, I see the Lions coming out on top, starting the season off at 1-0. The Rams, of course, going to 0-1, kicking off this NFL season. So there it is, the first week 1 review here on Johnny Gas Sports. What do you think about the matchup between the Lions and Rams? What do you have as the final score? Let me know down below what you expect to see in this matchup and what you think that final score will be. I'm very interested. It's a fantastic week 1 rematch, bringing Matthew Stafford back into town. Just so excited to have Lions football in the regular season here. It's going to be great to share it with you guys here on the channel. Make sure to hit the like button if you dig the vibe here on the channel. The subscription button and notify bell is there for you, and I'd love it if you consider becoming a part of the family. We also have a membership option. I'll have exclusive videos. I plan on doing highlight reaction videos for members only, so definitely take a look at that by hitting the join button. More than anything else, I want to make sure you take care of yourself, your mental health. I use football myself to get through stressful times, so if that brings you any joy, come back and see me on the channel. Definitely want to make sure we have some good times here in 2024 and beyond. You guys have a fantastic day. Go Lions.